Hello, welcome to Tokusatsu Thursdays. For people who haven't been following the channel, I said for the month of October, I would be reviewing more horror-themed Tokusatsu movies. And this week, we're reviewing The Vampire Doll, which is a 1970 horror film, which is part 1 of the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, which is a series of vampire films made by Toho, the same company that made the Godzilla films. It's an hour and 11 minutes and is directed by Michio Yamamoto with, starring Yukiko Kobayashi as Yuko Nonomura. I love how they show a screenshot of Yukio, but it's not Yuki. It's not. It's it's the other actress in the film, Kayo Matsuo, who plays Keiko Sagawa. You have Akira Nakao as Hiroshi Takaki, who is in a lot of Godzilla films. He was in Mecha. I think it was called Mecha Godzilla Against Godzilla. He was in Tokyo SOS, and he was in the beginning of Final Wars, right? You have Atsuo Nakamura as Kazuhiko Sagawa, Kaku Takashina as Genzo, and Yoko Minakaze as Shido Nomomura. They're not showing who played the Doctor, which the Doctor I think was another guy who was in Godzilla films. He looked like it. So this movie, this movie is like part 1 of Toho's infamous, uh, infamous Dracula vampire films, which I don't know. I heard like they made like a Japanese Dracula film, so I'm like, oh, I'll check it out. Not knowing it was 3 films, right? And Dracula, there's no Japanese Dracula in this movie, which I was a little disappointed. Right, but the movie starts off kind of similar to like the Dracula film, where you have a guy who's riding on the back of a taxi. Late at night, it's pouring rain in a thunderstorm, and he's on his way to his beloved's family home, which looks like it's supposed to be a Western style mansion, right? But the outside does not look very Western, but the inside it looks very Western European. You know, they were going for a Gothic look for the house, and I thought the house was supposed to be like a. It looks like he gets to the house, right, and immediately gets attacked by Genzo, who's like supposed to be this deaf dumb guy who has sharpened teeth. So it's like he's like a Igor or something. I don't know. And like the house looks like a hotel room or a bed and breakfast. I thought they were gonna say that. Apparently that was just my imagination going, going astray or whatever. But yeah, the place looks like a bed and breakfast, honestly, or a hotel of some kind. But yeah, he gets there and he finds out his girlfriend, which he hasn't seen in 6 months because he went to America for work, is dead, right? And she died in a landslide, right? So he stays the night, stays the night and sees Yuko. Well, it's Yukio. It's Yukiko, but like they sometimes call her Yuko in the movie, right? So I'm just gonna call her Yuko for short. So Yuko shows up, and she's deathly pale. She has cold skin, and it turns out she's a vampire and kills him. But she's the kind of vampire that doesn't have fangs. She has like green eyes, and like these like huge bloody veins in her arms, right? Which looks like red streaks going down her forearms, right? Or at least one of them, sorry. And like, yeah, she's the kind of vampire that needs needs to use blades, you know, to like get at the blood. She doesn't have fangs, right? Which has been done before in other films, right? I can't remember which films, but I remember seeing films where it's like, oh yeah, the vampire, where like it was a vampire movie, but they didn't have fangs, right? I'm not talking about that one George Romero film. What's it called? Simon or some shit. I don't know. There was some George Romero or whoever did a vampire film. Or was a crazy guy who thought he was a vampire, right? Who would kill people with like knives and shit. Kind of like which was obviously, I don't know if that was based off the Sacramento vampire, which is a fucking which is like a true story about some fucking crazy asshole who would go around killing, raping people, thinking he was a vampire, right? Oh my, I fucking hate true story. Like, what's it called? True crime stories? I don't know how people can listen to that shit. Fuck, man. But yeah. So yeah, like, days go by, his sister gets a bad dream about her brother and decides to take her fiance to go and investigate, you know, her brother's missing disappearance. While they're there, they learn the backstory behind the Nonomura family, and how like 20 years ago everybody was shot and killed by a guy with a pistol, and like, you know, great the mother, and then like, you know, Yuko was born, right? So like people were like, oh, that family is cursed, right? Yeah, the family is cursed. Which you have a really cool, like, you know, throughout the movie, like, you know, the sister sees Yoko, right? And they go to talk to the doctor who was there when like Yuko died, and the one chick like tells her, "Oh, I've seen Yuko last night, doctor," right? And the guy is like, "Oh, fortunate for you, though I'm a doctor, I'm also a researcher in the occult." And he tells them all this like this World War II ghost story where one of their soldiers died right in the jungle, and he was constantly talking about how he wants to come. He's not gonna die until he goes home, right? And then like he tells this haunting like story about like on the boat trip back home, he was the ghost of the dead guy was there with everybody, and everybody saw him. Which he tells like, you know, the doctor, the sensei, the doctor, which people don't know. They if you're in a position of like, you know, great respect or authority, you know, like people call you sensei, right? In Japan, like, so teachers, doctors, professors, famous artists get called like sensei, shit like that, right? So yeah, like he was pretty good in the movie. I like the scenes where like the scenes where he's like all where he tells like, you know, haunting like stories, right? Which, you know, there's like a mystery aspect of the film where like, you know, it's the thing where like, because I heard like one of these films had Dracula in it, I was waiting to hear that, oh yeah, Dracula was the father of Yuko, right? Or like Satan or something, right? It turns out to be somebody in the film, which is kind of obvious who it is if you think about it. But I was thinking, oh, Dracula's gonna show up at some point in this movie, right? Which Dracula never shows up. There's only one vampire in the movie, and how they killed the vampire was like, you know, not the great. Well, it's the thing where like it was like all the curses ended. So spoiler alert. You know, she just drops dead after she kills kills the her father, right? So what did I think about the movie? There's some cool, there's some cool visuals in the movie. The sound design was great, I thought. Not a lot of special effects, which is one of the definitions of a tokusatsu film, is like, you know, special effects heavy movie, and this is not a special effects heavy movie. I think watching the film, I think I counted the special effects, and there was only like, if you don't count makeup, there was only like 3 special effects in the film. So it's like, fuck. Like, cause like, you know, I made up like 3 excuses why this counts as a tokusatsu film. Right, which the 3 excuses were, what was it? Well, one of the excuses was, you know, I was looking for like a horror themed tokusatsu films to review for this month, and besides from Keita Emiya movies, there aren't a lot of them, right? So I'm like, oh, this is made by Toho, the same company that made Godzilla. This fucking counts. It's a right, and I can't remember the second one. I think that was the second one. But it's like, fuck, man. It's like, dude, it's the thing where, like, I don't want, if I review too many Keita Emiya films, right, I'm going to get burned out on Keita Emiya, and I don't want that to happen, right? So that's why I want to space out the Keita Emiya reviews. But yeah, this movie, it's the thing where, like, you know, it's barely a tokusatsu film, other than, like, you know, tokusatsu is like the Japanese equivalent of genre films, and genre films tend to be what, like, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, right? So you know, I don't know. It kind of counts as a tokusatsu film, but not really, to be honest. But I thought the movie was good. You know, the action scenes were very good, I would say, but it's kind of like like I think they sped up the film, or like during the action scenes. I could be wrong, because it's like, dude, like the dude, like Genzo attacks multiple people throughout the film, right? And like he's swinging like crazy, and like you're seeing the guy he's attacking dodge, right? Like super, like he's Spider-Man and has like fucking Spidey sense. I'm like, how the fuck? How the fuck? Because you're like, you just got ambushed, but you're like dodging left and right. Right? So like they obviously sped up the action scenes, and there's a really cool night fight along a cliff, right? Which ends with somebody getting, you know, tossed over. That was a cool shot of that fight. But yeah, there's lots of cool shots in the movie. The movie does a good job being atmospheric. The music was decent. The music was decent. You know, I like the makeup effects for the vampire. She looked very good, right, Yukiko? But it's the thing where, like, you know, if you're not a fan of, like, you know, slower burn, like atmospheric horror films, like this movie was, these movies were obviously inspired by Hammer films. Hammer films being like the British horror studio, with, you know, Christopher Lee and like not Vincent Price. Fuck, what's the guy's name? Vincent something. I think it's Vincent something. I can't remember. But the guy, no, Peter Cushing. My bad. I always get, for some reason, I get Peter Cushing mixed up with Vincent Price. I don't know. They look nothing alike. I don't know. Like, Peter Cushing looks like a Vincent. But yeah, like, yeah. So it's kind of like, this movie's kind of in the vein of those movies, but serious. Because like if you ever watch Hammer films, sometimes they would put like, you know, random gags here and there. You know, the movie stays serious, right? Which I enjoyed. But yeah, if you're not a fan of like 70s horror or slower burn atmospheric films, you're probably not gonna like this movie. But you know, if you're okay with like older films, like this is a decent watch, right? Um, yeah, and like the beginning of the movie totally reminded me of Dracula. So hopefully the sequels. I'm gonna keep watching these trilogy of films until like Dracula shows up. Hopefully he's in the second one. I don't know. So yeah, that's it for this review. Next week for Tokusatsu Thursdays, we're going to review uh, Tokyo Gore Police, which is like kind of like a Japanese take on Starship Troopers, but horror. So peace.